right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another This Legal Life podcast, specifically the Fireside Chat edition. I am very, very excited to be sitting here with a new Fireside guest all the way from Israel, Jonathan Achiron. How are you, Jonathan? It's really good to be sitting down with you today.
Hey Ben, thanks for taking the time to meet up. Excited to be here and looking forward to chatting with you.
Yes. Us as well. It's great always to be talking to somebody from Israel. It's a startup nation. There's so much happening always. Very exciting. Great companies have come out of Israel. And I know a lot of your practice is focused on a combination of M&A and the tech sector and kind of international. So we have three things specifically, and I know that that's what we're going to be talking about. So super exciting space. At the same time, the world's a lot of ups and downs going on, especially globally, nationally, sector-wise. Yeah, some interesting things here going on. But I think at the end of the day, always opportunities to do interesting things in up markets, down markets, sideways markets, and yeah, I think we're
Right.
going to be talking about that. But why don't you start us off a little bit? Just your background. You are a practicing lawyer, M&A, transactions. Yeah, who else is Jonathan?
Okay. So I've been a lawyer for the past 15 years or so. Got my degree from Tel Aviv University, and then moved to the States. Did my master's in law in Northwestern in Chicago, and then worked a couple of years in a big law firm in New York. Came back to Israel about 5 years ago, and doing the practice that I've been doing since. Got three kids, happy wife, and living in Tel Aviv. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. My practice, as you said, consists of mainly M&A, tech work, and day-to-day operations. And we'll expand on that as we go on.
Totally. Yeah, I've never been to Tel Aviv, but I have so many friends that just rave about it. It must be beautiful there. I live in Florida now, so at least there's a similar style, cool beach,
Yes,
hot weather, great people. I
exactly.
feel like yeah, it must be beautiful there. So next time I'm out there, I'll make sure that I ring you. So why don't we double click before getting into, we're going to talk about three aspects. The first I think is we're going to talk about M&A work and tech work specifically. The second will be around delivering good client experience in that vein, and then the last will be the importance of ecosystem building and referrals and working with larger law firms because that's very interesting. Um,
Yes.
why don't we before we get into those three questions, let's go into how you chose to go into technology companies and really how did you wind up there? Of course, technology has had such a big arc over the course of the last, let's say, 30 years, the post-dot-com boom and really whatever cycle of technology we're in right now, the third or the fourth or the fifth, I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But, it's really been a post-1990s phenomenon. And of course, Israel, a powerful nation that has produced many, many startups and incredible technology companies, they've had their own little arc within that bigger arc. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got wrapped up into that mini arc of the
Sure.
big arc? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So to start off, just my personal experience, was actually working with public companies in the States, big public companies, and the work was very, very boring, to say the least. It's SEC filing and it's routine work. There's not much imagination and so on and so forth. I got roped into this tech sector here, getting back to Israel. And as you mentioned, it is the startup nation. So almost everyone around you is either building a startup, closing a startup, doing another startup. So you hear all that. It's very, very near. It's just kind of around the corner. And you don't need to spend too much time finding the opportunities. It's just there. There's many people, young people, that they get out of the army, They have a learning curve experience in the army about tech stuff, stuff that we can't really talk about here, but cyber and security and defense and so on, and they get the understanding of how to do how to build a company, but they don't have the fundamentals, or what's they're missing is a lawyer, a financial advisor, and so on to kind of guide them through. And that's where I found a sweet spot that I can really leverage, my interest as a techie, and also bring the legal expertise.
Yeah, yeah. I To your point about a lot of young people coming out of the army, but even a bigger, Israel I think has a very big demographic push. There's lots of young people, and the population is growing. Of course, this is a little bit different than many other Western nations, which actually populations are declining. So that's not a point about anything. It's just a comment that a lot of young people with a lot of hunger. You put all of that together, combined with a boom in technology that is sort of running, and a very unified country. You get that sort of startup nation. I don't know, from an outsider's perspective, is that sort of what's going on in a nutshell?
It is. You're touching on the main points. You just have to add that army is mandatory, so you can't really escape that most of the time. And then people are seeing what their friends are doing or have been doing, and they want to do the same. So it's kind of sticks. You see your best buddy just left the army, starting a good startup, or getting a job from a very lucrative Google, Microsoft, one of those big giants, just because of his army experience. Sometimes even without a college degree. So that makes an impact. So you're saying I can do that. It's not that complicated. It's not rocket science. I just have to write code, and that's where a lot of that comes into. And then you add that there's a lot of smart people, so making it happen.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting, social dynamics, right? And the design of social dynamics, where it gets attracted to and what happens. Yeah, very interesting. We can talk about that, the underpinnings of Startup Nation, a little bit later, but much has been written on that. Okay, so let's go into our first pillar topic. I think something very interesting, which is, okay, so let's ground this as saying, it was everywhere around you. Lots of young people. We've just started talking. You found the sweet spot. So you're starting to talk a little bit about business development and, finding your sweet spots, finding your niche. Very important. Whenever I was practicing, my sweet spot, I lived in Miami, and I loved boats. So I picked maritime law, so there we go. So I love being on boats. The irony, joke on me, is I thought that I was going to be going on yachts. I never left my office, but still, joke on me. Yeah. But I was trying to think of it. I was trying to get on as many boats as I possibly could. Okay, there's a subsect I think that you want to talk about business development within that, which is, okay, you put yourself in a growing area, super important. You put yourself where the economy is going, very important. There's something about international law firms and developing relationships, and really what we're talking about is business development and client building by virtue of having strong referral relationships. So you want to talk a little bit about, if let's pretend like you were a brand new lawyer wanting to get into technology. That you want to get into technology, cool sector. That you want to do it in a place that is growing. Let's say Israel or one of the other startup nations, Brazil, et cetera, parts of the United States. There's this extra element, which is how do you start to develop a referral network for yourself? Because that's where a little bit the sweet spot I think is starting. So you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, I'll give my personal view, but the fact that I had the opportunity and actually, the luck spending time in the States made a huge impact, because, most of the companies we work with, one of the element that they want to do is build a business in the States, right? It's a big market. And having that relationship and connection when you go to college, you go to university in the States, open you up to a lot of aspects, and you meet new people, lawyers, other service providers, that if you keep in touch and you do what every networker does, it brings the business. It takes time, but it generates the flow. So if you're just starting out, my take would be try to get with a big firm where you can have multiple connections and get FaceTime with as many clients as you can, especially in the tech industries, that can allow you to either collect your own book of business later on, but be able to generate the leads and connection that would assist you later on in your career. It's something that young people don't really think about, but you're trying to educate them that that's like really part of what you have to do.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I think that's a good foundation. Why don't we take it a little bit from there into this idea of, you know, working with international referral partners? You have a concept called,
Sure.
Pathfinder transactions, which, let's just define Pathfinder. You can define it, but, Pathfinders are people who find the path, people who go out
Right.
ahead of time. But yeah, you want to tell us a little bit about this concept of Pathfinder
Yeah,
transactions?
I think one of the things that I found to be very helpful is to be proactive,
Yeah.
in the sense that if you wait for the problem to come to you, then maybe one day they will. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
if you're Martin Lipton from Wachtell, then everyone will come to you. If you're like a really big hot shot lawyer, that's
Sure.
the way it works. But for us, you really have to be out there and put yourself out there. And be proactive about it. So it's not just thinking about potential problems, but also thinking about what are the upcoming problems that your clients might be dealing with, and be proactive about it and reaching out to them. And obviously, if you're doing it on an international scale, it would be more generate more business. So, for example, just putting like in a concrete, down to earth thing, you have a client. He's a U.S. based tech company. They have a research and development center in Israel, for example, but could be in any other place, and you know that they're going to be passing some very rigorous regulation that would affect, you would reach out, you explain the situation, and you show how you have an extra edge there and some more value, and rather than wait for the client to pick up the phone and call you and ask, oh, I heard about that. So trying to be more proactive about it is one way to do it. One more thing I would say is trying to be as much up to date as what's going on, right? Not just reading the news, but also there's so much social platform where you can express your opinions. I'm not talking about Twitter and Donald Trump, but
Sure.
the more I would say the more professional mediums, right? So putting yourself out there and trying to make a reach, does make a difference.
Yeah.
A difference.
I'll add a comment here. I just got back from the Legal Sales and Service Organization, their annual conference, LASSO, and the keynote presentation was about the different type of business developer lawyers, the different types of people who make business, and they bucketed it into 4 different types of people. The first is I'll cut to the chase and be very brief about this. The first is the honest person. I'm going to tell you basically like it is, and I won't lie to you. That's kind of their thing. The second is the I'm the best. So the marketing is based. I'm the best. Blah 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 blah. And that's where it is. The third was I'm going to sort of challenge you, and I'm there to sort of push back on you. The fourth person was the just wait for people to sort of come to me effectively, but have a very small network of people that you care about, like only focus on 20 people who invite you to their daughter's wedding, effectively.
Exactly.
And then the last is who you were describing, which is this person is the proactive win-win creator. It's something is happening in the client's world, and you want to be the first person who tells them about it and even tries to point them in the right direction. And then they tied books of business and closed one back to the different types, and just it's probably not that that surprise, you probably know where I'm going with this. The
Yeah.
win-win person obviously did phenomenally
Yeah.
well. The person who typically scored below average in terms of books of
Right.
business was sadly, basically a combination of the person who pushes back on clients and is always trying to
Yeah.
like, do something, and unfortunately, the one who kind of just sits and waits for people to come to them, be, based on saying I'm the best. Because what ends up happening is just everybody sort of says they're the best, and
Yeah.
it gets a little hard to differentiate. So those were the people. So anyway, I just wanted to. There's hard data now, and this was based on a survey of over 35,000 lawyers across almost every single
Okay.
country. So
That's
really interesting study. Yeah. So anyway, so the data sort of backs it up. Okay. I Let's take the conversation now, I think, a little bit into differentiation and strategies for sort of supporting differentiation, because it's a very competitive market these days, and a lot of people are trying to differentiate themselves in different ways, different
yeah.
business development strategies at an individual level, but also at a lawyer level. Do you want to sort of let's start with like the law firm level? Do you want to share some insights on how law firms are thinking about
Yeah.
supporting
Yeah, I
differentiation?
can I can start from the top and drill down
Cool.
to to my own private
Perfect.
area. But
Yes,
I
right.
think you see firms starting to try to be like a one-stop shop. You've seen it
Yeah.
before. That notion is still out there. It's still happening. Smaller firms are being acquired by bigger firms, and to get a more client based approach where you can bring the client almost everything they need. From M&A to trust and estates to white collar crimes, whatever you need, you have one place. You usually have a one key contact or key partner that is the one overseeing everything. But there's like smaller specialization for every area. That's something we still see today, even in Israel, and especially in I would say niche practices where you wouldn't see it in the past, right? Like patent prosecution, a specific private citizen against the government litigation, and so on and so forth. So those areas where you would typically see like a boutique law firm, you can now find in the bigger firms. So that's like on a firm level where you try to differentiate. We have this practice, right? ESG now is like a big name. So firms are trying to see if they have an expert for that specific practice, right? Crypto and blockchain was like a couple of years ago, that was the thing. Now it's less. So, that's kind of what you're seeing on the firm level.
Yeah.
Firm trying to be like a one-stop shop, and you see lawyers like if you go down to the departments and the more smaller group practices, you see lawyers that used to do everything commercial. You're just doing now, loan agreements or lender side or mortgage side or whatever side that they're doing, and this is the only documents and type of book of business that they'll handle.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, I totally agree with you, and that's one model. I think sometimes there's a whole other model, which is the idea of sector-based approaches, right? Where
Right.
they are just splitting their brain and saying, "Oh, well, no, we're only taking high technology companies in crypto." I mean, that's very niche,
Yeah,
but it could be in a
of
certain
course.
time it was totally doable, effectively. So, I guess a nuance to what you're saying is there's like a one-stop shop fits all for a particular type of client, and
Right.
you have it's like by practice area, so you covered it all, and then there's one-stop shop almost for particular types of clients, almost exclusively. I don't know if they're the same or kind of underneath or whatever, but that's what I took your point to sort of be. And then at the individual level, again, it sort of starts
Yeah.
to
And
sort of break out in that way as well.
right.
It's either do it all for sort of one type of person, or niche to any client effectively, but one practice area.
Yeah, Ben, does make sense what you're saying, and you do see sometimes, maybe not in Israel so much because we're a much smaller,
Sure.
Population-wise, much smaller in size, but you do see firms that, we're doing only oil or energy-related stuff, so sector-based work. We'll only do, white-collar crimes, but not, for example, other heavy violence crime, right? So you do see that industry-wise. I can say that cyber and everything cyber-related started to be its own thing right now. You used to see transportation more and everything that relates to transportations and fintech, for example. Now there's like a big conference in Israel next week for fintech. So that became a thing now, and it changes, right? So you have those. I would say in Israel, because the market is smaller, the law firms tend to take almost everything they can get.
Sure.
With very small, being able to actually differentiate and say, I'm doing only this, I won't take that type of case. So, but you do see it in the States where you have referrals for, tie back to the referral point where we need a lawyer to handle us with Nevada regulation for casinos. There's only 10, 15, 20 firms that can do that type of work. And you can't really go to any other firm. So you do see that.
I was going to ask you the point about referral because, yes, I take your point. And, not many countries are as big as the United States where I live. Of course, there's that's not to say size is everything. There's also transaction number of debts and how much is happening and growing rates. I think something like Israel is very indicative of that. Yes, maybe US has a lot, but are they trending down or are they trending up? That's interesting. The point that I wanted to make is also it's about referrals and being sort of from the outside in, a sort of destination for certain type of work, and also inside out to other places. So, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is assume you're a sector-based, and I just don't know how it works, and I'm just weighing it in my mind. Assume that you're a sector-based focused firm for crypto. Okay, fine. Within Israel, you get a lot of that work because you can do everything related, governance, employee, business, transaction, litigation, et cetera, et cetera. You can do the entire realm for that.
Right.
It seems like sometimes you will get work of people who are just looking to get advisory work about the Israeli climate for crypto, even if they're in another country, because clients think in terms of sectors and they think in terms of their vertical, right? They don't really think in terms of their practice areas. But at the same time, if you're not covering every single practice area, you're going to miss a client that isn't a crypto client. So it's just a balance. I don't know if I'm making my point clearly, but I think that there's something about also the referral element because the world is so much more connected globally across these markets.
You're right. And customers or clients, they do tend to see verticals, and they forget that, when they think about a different market or, they want to move now to the Asian Pacific or whatever, and then they remember, oh, you know what? That's not how they do business over there. Help me find someone. So it's good that you have the oversight of the industry as a whole, and you know what's going on. But at the same time, you do need to develop your own referral network or other professional, because you just can't know everything, and practically sometimes you got to have someone else on the ground in Singapore to file the paperwork. So it does, you see that a lot.
Yeah, totally. It's very interesting. The debate is still sort of up, but I think people are very tribal, and I think that even goes down to companies, and I think they think in terms of their own things, effectively. So that's where I'm putting my chips now, and I think the echo chamber environment, it all it pushes people to be more in the bubble basically than less in
Yeah.
the bubble in some ways, and that means identity around sort of sector. So yeah, if I was still practicing, I think I'd double down on sector a little bit and balance it. But yeah, cool. All right, so let's talk about the current climate. Let's talk about what's going on right now and sort of
Yeah.
navigating the current climate. Um, you've been practicing for 15 years. Business cycles go up, they go down. The fun machine keeps on going round and round.
Yeah.
How have you started to think about, down markets versus up markets, and how do you kind of change your approach in that respect?
So it's funny to say that us lawyers, we always have work, right? There's always even in upside market and downside market. It's when you're buying a company, it's so the price may change, but the paperwork is pretty much the same. But it's like a big but. This ties to like our role, right? So I see myself not just as a lawyer, but like a trusted advisor. So you do help the client get to a better solution, because now when the market hits or it's a downtime, that deal doesn't really make sense right now. Or opening another business center and trying to get 100 more employees doesn't really make sense if you can't really finance it all. So you do see different type of transaction now. You see more fire sales. Companies that couldn't raise enough just go bust, and on the same token, someone else that does have cash available will just buy them for a cheaper price. So at the same time, there's a lot of movement, not in the up direction where you would see like this mega post on Wall Street. We sold the company. This company was listed for millions and billions and so on. But there are transactions, and your role is more of a handing, holding hands kind of role, where you need to help the client navigate, this treacherous waters, find a better deal, or decide what to do. Right? I had a client right now that had to close after, they raised a lot of money, 2 years ago, didn't financially handle themselves well, and got to a point where they need to either close it or try to sell the IP. And after researching a lot of options, we did find suitable buyer for some of the IP. Now, they could have let go and said, let it go to waste, but you were there to help them navigate those decisions. So that's like, and it's not just you're more in an advisor kind of position rather than old school lawyer drafting documents, right?
Right. Okay, let's end. You've given us so much of your time. Let's end with the idea of client experience and how that sort of, where's that going? Let's talk about client experience. Has always been fantastic, being client-centric in terms of the overall experience, not just the legal work, is obviously increasingly very important, and delivering a good client experience. Of course, it's interesting, where I think I want to ask you, based on your last point, which is this idea of changing your hats and being an advisor versus an old school lawyer, and where that sort of balance is for clients today. I think you get my point, but it's like clients, they want many other things that fall underneath the bucket of client experience now,
right,
above and beyond that core sort of like pillar. And there's lots of ways to describe this now. T-shaped lawyers who are like part advisor and then go deep on something. Yeah. People with large networks, people who can promote the company, to their own audience. Like, some lawyers are so focused on that, right? Like talking about their clients and promoting them. I mean, it's very interesting. Platforming the clients, being in a weird way like a marketing agency for the clients in a strange way. So there's a lot that's happening right now within the idea of client experience as clients kind of like evolve. And then there's the other whole side of it, which is, we don't have to get into it, but the automation and the speed to market and the time and speed to delivery of client services, all the rest of it. The world of we can
do a whole fire chat just on all the legal tech, right, and all the tools that they have.
The entire legal tech experience.
We'll schedule that again for that.
Yes, exactly. But what do you have to say about client experience today? And maybe we can talk about it within the context of, high
Yeah,
technology companies.
I feel that clients are more educated nowadays. They're much more educated in the sense that they know better what they want compared to, I would say, a couple of years back. There's so much information out there. Client can Google NDA, could Google license agreement, and then come back to you and tell you, this is what I want. So, your job is first and foremost, to getting the right result. But you are responsible of making sure that sometimes in the process, he understands, the pros and cons. I find myself in many instances, the clients come with an idea. I want to buy this company. Now, he doesn't really understand what does that entail, right? You just heard that, buying companies make the shareholders happy, right? But you have to think about that, right? You have to go through and think through. So, what we're trying to do is being more, having the client more involved. And okay, it's not for every client, but I would say the younger generation clients are feel that they are willing to be more involved in the process. Not in the sense that they'll be drafting the docs with us, but they will be sitting with us, kind of brainstorming and thinking through the process and how to get from A to B. And they're already doing that with their startup. So it's not something new. It's just doing it in a legal context, right? So that's something that is pretty much new, and it's, client experience, it is different from what they used to do when you would call your lawyer and tell him, draw me up a will, right? And you'll end up with a document which you don't really understand nothing that's written there. So they're more involved. You see that, and that's good. I think it's good. And if I want to touch just on all the techie stuff for the legal tech, we've really seen, an enormous amount of apps and text and a lot of gadget that makes lawyer life, much easier. So and it shows. So
yeah. One last question, and then we're going to get out of here. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. There's a whole other revolution that's going on top of the technology, which is the idea of, lawyers and business professionals and people who create a broader firm experience working aside. I mean, we could be very, very visual and say like technology. It's like client in the middle, technology, business people, lawyers, and then like client right in the middle, right? And everybody's kind of working together. How do you think about business people today in the context of law firms? And we're talking about marketing, we're talking about business development, we're talking about operations, we're talking about client people, all the rest of it, and that in the context of something like the client experience today. So have you given that some thought?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if that's because of more regulation or if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but because there's so much more regulation nowadays in various aspects, you find yourself having a conversation which you used to have just with the general counsel, with someone from operations, someone from HR. Everyone has questions. So the circle you just drawn up. It's all the clients are very, very varied, right? There's like someone from management. There's someone from administration, and you end up giving like a really full answer to a lot of questions. So you got to be very, very up to date in what you're doing. And again, I think it's a positive thing for us as lawyers. But I think it makes, the companies or the founders, entrepreneurs' life much more complicated because everything has to go through legal at some point. So, you're taking less chances, I would say, if you had done it, okay, let's do it. I don't care what the lawyer says. Let's do it. So
Right. I got it. Yeah, no, it's true. There's a lot of stakeholders. That's like the word. A lot of stakeholders now in the mix, especially. Well, Jonathan, I've really enjoyed the conversation sitting down. I really enjoy your perspective. It's been great. We got the chance to talk a little bit about building businesses. Building books of business. And the importance of really having kind of let's just say a
Yeah.
network, and a network that you can call on. We talked a little bit about developing and differentiating in a specific sector. So once you have the network, how do you start to differentiate yourself in the mind of these people? And then the last is, okay, you got the client, you got the network, you got the client, delivering the service and the expectation. So we really ran the entire cycle, from how do you get an introduction to the client all the way to how do you sort of deliver a great experience. So it was fantastic to walk through this. Yeah. Any last words?
No, thank you, Ben, for having me. It's been a pleasure. Hit me up whenever you're coming to visit in Israel, and see you next time in Florida.
Absolutely. Hit me up in Florida for sure. Okay. I right outside of Tampa, St. Pete. We'll switch beach houses. I'm a couple minutes away. We'll switch. Yeah, it sounds great. All right, Jonathan, thank you so much, and thank you to all the audience out there for another fireside chat. We'll be back very soon. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. So yeah,
Thank you.
bye.